Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 8th, 2024 meeting of the Brookline School Committee. I'd like to start by moving the consent agenda, which consists today only of one item, the minutes for June 26th, 2024, because of approval of grants needs some more staff work before the committee would be ready to vote on it. Do I have a second for the consent agenda? Okay, thank you, Stephen. Any discussion on it? Okay, seeing none. Helen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, moving on to our school committee actions. We begin with a discussion and possible vote on a reserve fund transfer request. I see that Diane is here. Diane, will you be taking the lead on presenting the work that you all have been doing over the last few weeks? Oh, and I see that Mariah is in attendees and should be
Coming over right now.
yeah, and Lisa as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone, and apologies that it took so long to get things out, but as you may or may not know, the fiscal year isn't entirely closed. It's mostly closed, but not entirely. So we wanted to get the most final numbers we could before we got the reports out. And Susan sends her apologies that she can't be with us tonight. I believe she's in the air somewhere trying to escape Texas at the moment. So the financial reports, the numbers, as you can see, Betsy, how do I screen share?
From the bottom of your menu, you should see the green button. If you kind of hover around the bottom.
There we go. Okay. All right. Is that coming up? Is that clearer, or do I need to make it bigger?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So this is our general fund and how we've come out. Mostly where we are, there may be some small tweaks, but this is substantively complete. And this represents the change we made when we moved money from the personnel line to the non-salary line to complete the issues we were having in the spring. As you know from the narrative we sent out earlier today, pretty much the same trending items were happening, and we ended pretty close to where we thought we would from the last report. So with that, are there questions?
I have one simple question, if I may. I mean, the gasoline, I thought we had all electric cars.
No, I don't believe so, with facilities and trucks and whatnot.
I don't know. I mean, it's not a big amount of money and it's not something that we need to spend time on, but
it is a journal entry from the DPW. We do buy our gas through.
yes, no, I'm aware, and I don't remember how many cars we have right now.
Nor do I, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I could find out if you'd like to know.
No, it's something, it's not important for now. It's not going to make a difference really in the total. So I think we just go ahead. But maybe you could just look into that at some point.
Diane, are you going to flip over to the memo and review it as well?
I will, yes.
Okay.
In fact, let's do that right now. Okay, so this is a 493,953, which represents less than 0.5% of our total general fund budget. You know, we always want to come in under budget, but we got it in as close as we could. And given the fact that we had real overages in some key areas, I think we did very well to bring it in as close as we did. We sure worked hard on it in these last few, well, we worked hard on it this whole spring. So I think the team deserves a lot of credit for pulling it back as far as we did. Transportation bounced up a bit more than we were thinking in May. It actually ended up falling a lot closer to where we originally thought in April. But because of what we were able to do with circuit breaker and tuition in May, that helped us out to some degree. Legal came in better than we originally projected in April. Professional services ended up coming in a little worse than we even thought in April, but it wasn't a huge deviation over the course of the spring. Claims got a little better over the course of the spring. But I mean, these were the hot spots in the budget for us. So no other raging hotspots emerged as we went through the spring. Questions on this section?
I'm sorry. Was this distributed before this meeting?
Yes, it's in, Betsy had sent it out.
Can you just let me know what time that email was sent?
About 3:15, I think. Sorry, Betsy, I'm jumping across you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
3:10 or 3:15?
Yeah, the one I have is 4:11 when they made a change in the narrative document, actually, though.
Carolyn's hand is up.
Thanks. I guess my question is a comment and a question, and none of this is a statement about your work. Obviously, Diane or Susan's, you're both new, and I hope I've been clear in my appreciation of the work. Still, it's not a good situation to have to go to AC to ask for a reserve fund transfer when the statute that they'll be considering, I think the wording includes that, this can be done when there are extraordinary and unforeseen circumstances. So the paraprofessional salary line, it's a lot of money but that shouldn't be unforeseen. I think. I mean, I don't run the district, but this just seems like a super basic thing. And I know you guys are making efforts to try to ensure this doesn't happen again. I guess I'm like, how confident are you that this isn't gonna, some of these things still might happen. I totally get that. The transportation, the tuition, even the settlements, but salary, like, we gotta know who's working for the public schools of Brookline and how much we've promised to pay them. So it's just really hard to look at that.
Agreed. And that's why when Susan got here, we started making plans to get position control in place. Why we worked really hard throughout this fiscal year to get it in place for FY24 and have it in place as we develop the FY25 budget. So, that was a flashing red light as soon as we both walked in the door. And we've worked very hard at that, and it is front and center in all of our efforts of hiring, terminations, all the HR paperwork, all the payroll paperwork. It is fundamental to what we're doing right now. And it's the biggest part of the budget. The positions, that's where you spend your money in education. It's essential. Position control is vital to good budget management. And, excuse me for jumping around. I'm deeply committed to it. Susan's deeply committed to it. It's the only way to manage a budget.
Before we go to Helen and Suzanne, if I could ask a follow-up question to Carolyn's, which is I'm wondering about the on-the-ground implications of putting in position control next year. So paraprofessional salaries are not among the items for which we have a budget increase next year, reflecting our overage from this year. So this means that $1.37 million worth of para positions that were filled this year are just not going to happen next year.
No, that's not true.
Okay, so do you mind explaining what it actually implies then?
what we can't speak to is the 10.899, what exactly the head count was that made up that number. We do know exactly what the head count is that makes up our number for FY25. That's where the position control comes in. We created the numbers from actual bodies, positions, where they are. So going forward, as long as we're very careful about who gets hired into what position, that we don't create positions that weren't in the budget without everybody being very clear about it, and equally important, how they're going to be funded, it will be fine. It's when you run into a very common situation, and this happens in all districts, all your paraprofessional positions that were budgeted are filled, and yet a student has an immediate need for another paraprofessional, and so you must hire them. The IEP demands it, you must do it. And so you add one. And then a paraprofessional leaves, or 3 leave, and then you hire 4 because you get your wires crossed. And it sounds simple, but it isn't. Paraprofessionals come and go very quickly, demands change, students move around. It's very easy to lose track of your paraprofessionals if you're not really meticulous about position control.
Okay, I see Helen, Suzanne, Stephen, and Mariah. I'm not sure
Andy, can I
understand
ask a
yet, but-
question, a follow-up on that? Because mine's
Yeah,
specifically about
I mean,
this.
I don't actually understand yet the answer to my question. I'm hoping that will get answered in the course of what other people are going to ask, but go ahead,
Can I-
Mariah.
It's
if
a
you could-
specific follow-up on that. So Diane, just so I'm clear, the salary that we have budgeted for paraprofessionals for next year includes essentially all of the people we have hired, all of the positions we have hired currently. So that while we have a gap in 24, we are not forecast to have that gap in 25 because you have position controlled all the existing positions in. I'm seeing you nod, so I think that, Andy, answers your question.
Okay. Actually, it's fine if no one knows this off the top of their head, but what did we budget for paraprofessional salaries next year? Or is that maybe not a line that we can immediately see into?
I can't snap that up right now, but I could get back to you with that.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So I saw Helen, then Suzanne, then Stephen.
So I just, since most people are new on the school committee, to the best of my recollection, this is the first time we've gone to the advisory committee for a reserve fund transfer. One time we thought we had to, and then in the end, we realized we didn't have to. This is not something that we do all the time. I think this has been an unusual year with a lot of turnover that makes it very difficult to follow things. That's not an excuse, but it is the reason that we're doing that this year. And my hope is that with Diane and Susan, on top of things from the beginning, we will be getting, better reports and know that where we are sooner. So I think we have to put this into perspective of all the years that we've stayed within our budget and haven't gone over it. So.
Andy, can I make just one little comment on Helen's remarks?
Okay.
Just that, just to add on to what you said, Helen, I don't think it's about turnover among the staff. I think it's actual cost overages as you see in that last column. So I just want to be clear that when transportation, and you see some of the reasons here, right? The delayed invoicing and the fact that the primary vendor wasn't able to deliver, and so we had to go to other vendors. There's real reasons for cost overages here, which in my mind aren't necessarily tied to turnover. It's really just actual costs.
Yeah, no, the only thing we might have done would be to freeze things earlier had we known. That might have been a thing. But yeah, you're right. You're right.
Hey, Suzanne?
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to support what Diane was saying. So these are for position control positions that are already existing. However, when you do have a new IEP, it is possible that the team will require that we add additional paraprofessional. And so, it's also possible at a team meeting that they will remove a paraprofessional from a student. So it can go either way, but you can't always predict exactly what your needs are going to be as you go through the year. that's the team's decision. And when the team says, yes, the student needs a paraprofessional or whatever it is, then that's a requirement that we have to fulfill. So again, it could go either way. We could lose positions or not lose them, but we could dismiss positions for a particular IEP, or it could be that we actually increase them. And so it's hard to know exactly what that number is going to be.
Okay, thank you. Stephen and then Mariah.
Thanks. Two questions. One, Diane, can you, I don't remember the number specifically. I thought I remembered that when the possibility of a request for a reserve fund transfer initially came up in school committee, we were looking at a number closer to 1.7 million. Wasn't that the first number that we were looking at?
In
Wasn't that
April,
the April number?
in April, when we were projecting, we did not have a clear picture of where things stood. We were asking for information. We were seeking information. We had a lot of ambiguity about what was out there. We hadn't yet booked all of the expenses we knew about. We knew there was expenses we didn't know about. Looking at trend lines, things were looking fairly horrifying. And so, you know, it's always better to overtell it than undertell it. And
Right. So
based on that point in time, that's what it was looking like.
So the bottom row of that table that says net reduction in projections from April to June is 308. Would that then have brought it to 1.4 before you made further adjustments? So then did you make $1.4 million worth of adjustments in the last week?
900,000, because there's still a 493 deficit.
I didn't hear what you just said. I'm sorry.
There's still a deficit, so we didn't
Oh,
close
I
out.
see. So if it was 1.7 initially,
Yeah.
and then a further reduction of 300,000, so that brings it to 1.4, and there's still 500,000. So that means you found $900,000 worth of savings.
Yes.
Can you walk us through a bit about what you did to find those savings or to find those actuals?
Yep.
Just to
we
give us further
deferred-
insight into this.
Sure. We deferred about, I don't remember the exact number. We deferred some expenses to next year. We denied some expenses outright. We were able to utilize another $300,000 of circuit breaker funding. And that's pretty much all of it right there.
Okay. And that is despite the fact that the paraprofessional salary line increased by about 1.2, and that's going to be a new level of spending that we're going to have to sustain going forward.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Diane. I appreciate that.
Hey, Mariah, and maybe feel free to make the motion if you want to.
Oh, I was. Oh, I
Yeah,
was.
Great.
I just wanted to say thank you to Diane and Susan for bringing us through this process. And I know it's been really hard to, building on what Helen said, to take ownership of something that you didn't create. So you kind of have to figure out how the machine was built without an instruction manual, or at least without you even knowing the ins and outs of it the way that you might have if you had created it. So it's really wonderful that you've been able to get this far. And as you said, I mean, this is a relatively large amount, but it is a very small amount of the budget. And if we'd come in that fraction of a percent under, we'd all be thrilled. And if it goes the other way, you know, it's hard, but it's hard to have this many moving parts. And especially with all of the things that you mentioned, especially I think the transportation is just something that, and the tuition as well, although luckily that came in under, but these are things that are largely much out of our control. So I am going to make the motion that, if you don't mind, Diane, could you scroll down a little bit to where I think the motion is so I can read it? So the motion would be that the school committee requests a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $493,953 for the school department's FY24 general fund.
Right, is there a second to Mariah's motion?
I'll second.
Okay, I saw Stephen's hand first, so Stephen gets that honor. Okay, so it's on the floor now, and I saw Carolyn and then Stephen's hands up.
Thanks. Just going back to the para line item and then for the 2025. So, and you know, this all makes sense. I have no complaint whatsoever about spending on staff and student facing educators, paras, Unit A. That's where I want to see money spent. And it was helpful to hear a little bit from Suzanne about how, you know, para assignments can change throughout the year. So while we heard that the FY25 para number is based on the head count we have here, forgive me for not knowing off the top of my head, is there contingency money there as well for FY25 that will allow flexibility as needed?
I believe what Susan has planned is in the event that we need to add positions, she plans to do a process of bringing it to your attention on the committee to say, because of the following reasons, we should add this position to the budget. It will cost this. We've identified this as a funding source. Do you approve it as an add-on to the budget? So that it will be crystal clear to everybody that this is an increase.
So thank you for that explanation. That sounds like the answer to my question is no, there's not contingency money, knowing that paraprofessional needs can shift throughout the year. I mean, that's great, but identifying a funding source, I mean, that's pretty.
Can I answer a little bit of this too, Andy, if that's okay?
All right.
So we had a multi-year budget guideline because there was a reserve fund in the past, Carolyn, for staff lines that got eliminated last year for the current year. And that's part of a little bit of why we're seeing this a little bit more exposed. And in the guidelines, we made it a multi-year plan to build that back. So part of that was the staffing positions that got put in at the high school. This year, some of them were allocated and some of them were held as a reserve to be able to deploy at the high school. And the plan is to build that back over multiple years to be able to address this. But also, and I'm sure Diane could talk about this at length, but you know, for example, if a position is empty for a fraction of the year, those funds don't get spent, and then that's money that can be deployed to another position. So, you know, any position in the district, right? If it's empty, then there's reasons that positions are unfilled all the time. So it does give us some flexibility in the personnel line. And I'm glad you brought this up too, because I meant to mention before I made the motion that Susan and I have talked about exactly what Diane mentioned, which is bringing any sorts of new positions forward, bringing them forward, I believe, through finance to be discussed as part of just the standard process of the subcommittee, so that again, it does sort of create greater transparency into when positions are added and why and what the funding mechanism is, so we're all on the same page.
Thanks. That's helpful, and that's helpful history, and that makes sense what you're saying, that throughout the year there can be positions that are unfunded or unfilled, and that allows the flexibility. And I don't mean this to be snipey at all, but obviously that didn't work this year because we ended up $1.3 million.
So Carolyn, we have other folks with their hands up, and after that, I would like to move to a vote if possible, because we have barely scratched our agenda so far. So unless there was something pressing, Carolyn, can we move on to Stephen and then Jesse?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I just wanted to echo Helen's thanks, Diane, and just say also that I also find myself frustrated and grateful. I'm frustrated that we're at this point and then we have to request this transfer. I see we have a number of AC members in attendance who are probably equally frustrated and critical at this point, but I'm grateful to you and to Susan to the work you're doing at bringing a more rational budget process and structure to us at the school committee so we could make decisions, and we have a process by which these things are carry less risk going forward. So thank you.
Jesse?
Yeah, a question for Diane. Given what you said earlier about the dynamics of people going in and out of positions opening up because of IEPs, et cetera, what specific plan do you have from a software tool point of view so that the district as well as school committee would have some transparency into this process, day by day as the school year transpires? Or is it all done in a spreadsheet somewhere?
It is in fact done in a spreadsheet.
Thank you.
All right, before perhaps moving to a vote, I would also like to add my thanks to Diane and Susan and the finance team for the work you've been doing to understand what's been happening and then to explain it to us and the community in a way that makes sense and that we can understand. Thank you. All right, Betsy, do you mind taking down the documents so that you and I can see all the members? All right, so I don't see any more hands up, so I think we can move to a vote. Helen?
Yes.
Jesse?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we will be requesting that reserve fund transfer. I think we're speaking twice with advisory committee tomorrow as well as the select board.
I just want to remind any members who might want to participate that all of those meetings, well, the 2 advisory committee meetings are in person, and so we'll be going to the select board in person as well. Helen, that's right. So it's
In
going to be
person?
yeah, it's all in person. So 103 in town hall, starting at 6, and then up to the select board around 7, and then back down to advisory, which is in the 6th floor, and then back to advisory on the 1st floor for 7 o'clock.
I have the building commission at 6, but I'll try and see where I can float. I ask for Karen King to be promoted for this next item?
Sure, I'll bring her right now. Thank you, Helen.
Okay, while that's happening, I can introduce the next agenda item, which is a discussion and possible vote on approving the MOU for 150 Fisher Avenue to accommodate Pierce Middle School during construction. So you'll recall that this is, I believe, the 3rd time that we've taken this up at full school committee. Where we left it last time was that there were some differences between the version that the select board had voted and the version that some of us would have liked to see. And so Mariah and Susan were asked to continue the process of working with our town partners to refine that document. Where we seem to have landed is the proposal tonight would be to vote through the MOU as the select board voted it. We have a memo of transmittal that we would like to send to the town administrator and the select board explaining some of our questions and concerns. And there are now also updated exhibits A and B, and many thanks to Karen King for putting that together. Exhibit A is an updated floor plan indicating how we plan to use the various interior spaces. And Exhibit B is about the parking and the basketball court. So Helen or Karen, is there anything to add on this?
I think I would hope that people would realize that the perfect sometimes could be the enemy of the good. And Jamie has said that she's able to work with this MOA and has good relationships with people. And so much of, what we do is the relationships with other town departments. And so I would hope that we could vote this tonight so that they could move forward.
Thanks, Helen. Mariah?
I just had one question, which I apologize I didn't ask earlier, but I couldn't remember from the last time we talked if my new understanding of the number of parking spaces available to Pierce met the need for the number of parking spaces. I guess that's a question for Karen or Helen. Oh, Karen's unmuting.
Yep, so the number of parking spaces that we now have will more than meet the number of teachers that will be on site at the building any given day.
Okay, so it's 30, right? That's what I understand now is 30 is the
30
number.
plus 2 handicap spots, yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Carolyn.
Thanks. I didn't have that question, but just segueing from Mariah, I thought Jamie had said she needed 35 parking spots. And then, so Helen, given what you just said in the intro, do you still want us to send this memo that includes the concerns that other school committees members had expressed previously, this transmittal?
So I've been on vacation until about 3 hours ago, and I didn't see that transmittal. I'm sorry about that. I thought I saw everything but that particular piece.
I'm just looking at it for the first time too.
Okay.
And that's why I'm asking, because and I was relatively agnostic on this, other
From
than
my
the,
perspective, I'm not sure it's necessary, but if it makes people feel better, then we should do it. I
Okay.
think if we have issues, we talk to them and we tell them, and they'll tell us what their issues are. We try and mediate between us of what, how to manage it. I mean, I think that our issues had to do with things after school. It's clear that most of the kids won't be there after school, except up until 3:30 when the last bus leaves. So, there may be occasional things that happen at the school, but their plan is to not have them there, to have them closer to where they're going to be at the end to be able to get home for the middle schoolers.
I don't think that's really even present in the transmission anyway, because of the comments that Jamie made. There's a question about the standard events, like the back to school night, not requiring permission, but merely communication. But the question of after school activities is not present in the transmittal memo.
Okay.
Andy, do you want me to go through it really quickly for people?
I guess if several members haven't had a chance to review it yet, it might be worth summarizing. I mean, at a bare minimum, we need to mention that the exhibits that we're approving are different from the ones that the select board had in front of them.
And also that the language around Fisher Hill Park was clarified by the Parks and Open Space Director to mean that we can use it if permitted. It's not a blanket prohibition. It just requires a permit.
Yeah, if you want to very briefly summarize the other
Sure.
bullets.
So again, the idea was not to try and rewrite the MOU, but just to to sort of flag for people's awareness, both things that we had learned since the select board had signed, and also to just flag, those were 2 of the 5 points. And then the other 3 points are questions we have. And one of those is about using the building for the routine school related events, like I just mentioned, back to school night. And we're not demanding anything. We just mentioned what we prefer, that there had been this communication, and we just hope that there'll be no, there won't be any denial of these kinds of events. And then the second of the 3 that isn't just a sort of routine business is termination of the MOU. We flagged that there is language that's different in 2 different spots about how or when the MOU can be terminated. And then there's sort of the issues like around, if the town decides to unilaterally terminate the agreement, there's nothing specific in the MOU that actually articulates how that would happen. But also, we really hope that no one wants that to happen. And so we just want to really understand what was intended for that. And then the last one is just about snow removal. Just that the MOU says that PSB has to coordinate with DPW for any snow removal needs, and us just assuming and confirming that this is already sort of the standard level of coordination that happens and not some different kind of coordination that they're expecting. Because I know that principals and DPW are already talking about things as needed. So just assuming it's the same old, but wanting to confirm. And that's really it. And then again, the routine things are the information from Alexandra Vecchio about use being allowed under the standard permitting process, and then just letting the select board know that both exhibits have been updated since they signed.
Okay. That sounds reasonable.
Okay, before we go to Carolyn, would someone like to just move it so that it's
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Helen and Mariah. Carolyn?
so, and sorry to belabor this a little, but so the select board voted an exhibit, and the exhibit being having to do with construction in the parking lot. So the select board voted something that didn't include the basketball court, which was approved by them, approved by us. I think it was something like $77,000. Now it's been updated to include not just the basketball court, but an additional vehicle entrance or exit. And so I'm a little confused now because this is the first we're hearing of that. And I don't know what the cost implications are for additional construction. And I sent a question after receiving this earlier today, but it was pretty late in the afternoon. It's not clear to me whether this additional construction was approved by the building commission, by the select board, by us, or what the cost implications are. And what the implications are, whether there's tree removal, just it's more construction. So I'm a little.
I'm not sure, so I'm confused now because I believe, Carolyn, you were one of the members who last time wanted Exhibit B updated to reflect the new entrance, the changes to the
No, I
parking.
wanted it to reflect the basketball court that was approved.
Well, which had implications for the remaining parking spaces and any new entrances or exits that might be needed. The other thing that confuses me is, why does the MOA have to address all the implications of things that it mentions? So this is an MOA between us and the town about the use of the space and the use of those parking areas. You know, we don't need to address in it construction costs.
Okay, that's fine if we don't have to. I guess I'm confused. And no, we did not talk about a second entrance. We approved a basketball court separately. So then maybe I'm just flagging as a question, and maybe someone can answer whether the additional construction work, sort of how that fits in. And perhaps that's true. It doesn't have to do with the MOA, but I'd feel slightly uncomfortable approving something that has implications for more construction and cost that is just.
Why don't
all
we
of a sudden
let
showing
Karen
up.
answer?
Karen, is your hand up to answer Carolyn's question? Please go ahead then.
So the second exit, the egress, was added very early on, still when Matt Gillis was here, and that between DPW and Matt Gillis thought that would be a better use, especially if there were going to be a play space to sort of stop the back and forth through the one entrance. And it also helps with the rubbish pickup, et cetera, having a garbage truck come through there to pick up a dumpster, to have it just go out the one exit. The creation of that egress is included in the cost of the basketball creation of the basketball play space. So there is no additional fees that would be part of that. We will try to preserve as much of the greenery and the fencing as we can. There is a little bit of the fencing that will need to come down, but the main part of the fence will remain, and we will stay within sort of the path area for the second for the exit. Sorry, I keep saying second. It's the exit. If that helps at all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Jesse, and then if there are no more questions, we can move to a vote.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. First of all, I just had noticed at the top of the MOU when I read it today that the fifth line, fourth word meant to be its ITS, but it was typed as just is, so it just doesn't read correctly. So maybe that change could be made before we send it over. And then that's fifth line at the top of the first page, fourth word. And then the second thing was, when I read the MOU and then read this letter that you wrote, Andy, I think they actually, like, they align very beautifully together, and I think, you know, promote a collegial relationship between the town and us, you know, representing PSB. So I have no issues. I mean, in reading it back and forth today, to see where each of the 5 items were referenced, we're adding some good language that tells Jazz and the town how we feel about some specific items, and it sets a very, sort of partnered kind of arrangement. So I would suggest that we just send both and move forward.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. I can't take credit really for drafting that memo. I think that was Mariah and Susan's work for the most part.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so just to be clear, the motion does include sending that memo as well as approving the MOU itself with the new attachments. So let us move to vote. Helen?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So on a third reading, we approve that MOU.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Jesse, were you referring to a typo in the MOA or in the transmission memo?
It's in the MOU.
In the MOA itself.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, we have a couple of items for which we need executive session. So I would move to meet an executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the BEU Units A, B, and Paraprofessional Unit, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining and litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. And purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes from the following meetings, June 13th, 2024, and June 26th, 2024. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks. Helen?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And we're very likely going to be returning to open session afterwards.
So members, you'll just close out this link and you'll have the other executive session link in the calendar invite. So just be sure to close this one out because we'll come back to it.
Thanks, Betsy.
Mhm.
Okay, welcome back to open session, everybody. We have 2 MOUs to vote on. So would anyone like to move the Fisher Hill MOU that we discussed earlier? Okay, I think
Just to be clear, we're
Fisher
moving,
Hill. We're not Fisher
moving.
Hill.
We already did that, didn't we?
BU.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There were 3 MOUs and I mentioned the one that we are not voting on. Yes, the MOU with the BEU on full day beep. Who would like to move that? All right, Suzanne gets that honor, and who would like the second? Thanks, Mariah. Okay, Mariah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. And that brings us to the second MOU with the BEU on making the Winthrop House director position non-aligned and adding 2 Unit B positions to the athletics department. Would anyone like to move that one? Thanks, Carolyn. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Okay, Suzanne. All right, Mariah,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So we have approved 3 MOAs today. Congratulations, and we can adjourn the meeting. Good night, everybody.